So with this recording, I'm going to actually go over chapter 11, section 2, and I want to go ahead and start with the slides, and then I'll move over to MyLabs Plus to work maybe a few examples. So what we're going to be basically talking about in this section is odds against and odds in favor. So their book and MyLabs Plus is on the viewed example. They do it a certain way, but I'm gonna kind of show you maybe a bit of a shortcut, and maybe hopefully that will actually lead to less of the confusion as far as what you're supposed to do with the problem. For section 1, we did a lot about probability, and we used the word total in the denominator. For this section, I want you to try your best to ignore. I know you did so many problems with probability and you've been using total for the denominator, but I want you to try your best not to use the number total, whatever the total is in the word problem, for this particular section. It'll make the problem much easier, in my opinion. So odds against. If we're talking about odds against, I would suggest you know that anytime you finish with your probability, the failure will go on top and success on the bottom. The other word we're going to be talking about is favor. So if you think about the two words, against and favor, against is kind of like a negative word, so that's why we're going to put that on top. If we're talking about odds in favor, and I can kind of just run down to show you real quick, odds in favor, we have success on top and the failures on the bottom. So if it's odds against, we'll put the failure on top, success on the bottom, and if it's odds in favor, we'll put success on top and the failure on the bottom. So let's go through a few examples. Determine the odds against rolling a 4 on a die. Well, we know that the total is going to be 6 because on a die they have 6 faces. But again, we're not going to use the 6. The only two numbers we're going to use is the odds 4. So how many chances of us getting a 4 on the die? Well, that's just going to be 1. That's a success. What are the chances of not getting a 4? That's going to be 5. So that's going to be actually our failure. So looking at here, and I hit the percent to kind of make it more sense. Looking at this one here, we're going to roll a 4, it's going to be 1 out of 6. To not run a 4, well, it's going to be 5 chances out of 6. So the 5 and the 1 is actually the only two numbers that we're going to be concerned ourselves with in this section of section 2. Don't worry about the 6, because you can see here they divided, they use the 6, but you see how the 6 already cancels out? So let's just go ahead and ignore the totals and just work with the success and the failure. And because we're talking about odds against, so we're going to bypass this and just work with just the two top ones on top. And because we're talking about odds against, that's why the failure goes on top and the success on the bottom. So a few more examples. What is the odds in favor of selecting a queen from a deck? Well, first of all, we have to kind of understand how many queens are in the deck. Well, there are 4 queens in the deck. You have the queen of hearts, the queen of spades, queen of diamonds, and the queen of clubs. So there are 4 of them. So what are the odds of us not selecting the queen? Wow, if we take those four cards away from the deck, well, there's 52 cards in the deck. So 52 minus the 4 we take it away is 48. So the odds of us selecting a queen is 4. The odds of us not selecting a king is 48. See how the total really doesn't really need to be in this section when we're talking about odds against and odds in favor. So favor, because this success goes on top this time, and because of the odds of against, the failure goes on the bottom, we reduce it down to 1/12. So let's back up and let's go to the homework now. And there's a few problems I want to work with. Let's do number 3 first. So for this particular answer, I already answered it, but the question was determine the odds against. So remember, if the against is known in the problem, the first part of the answer, the one that goes first on top, is the one that's going to be the against one with a failure one. The one that success goes on the bottom. So what is the odds against of the spinner landing on a red? Well, if I count the spaces that it cannot land on the red, which is going to be our against, it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That goes first, odds against. And then the success of it actually landing on the red is just 1. So that goes on the bottom. See, I did not use the total of the squares. I'm just saying the number of times it won't goes on top, odds against, and if it in the number of times it will on the bottom. Now, if this said determine the odds in favor, that means the 1 this time goes on top, and then the 7 goes on the bottom. Let's go through another example. So for this one here, if one ball is selected at random, determine the odds against, again, so remaining that the failure goes on top, success on the bottom, is containing the number greater than or equal to 12. So I'm going to do it actually view an example. I think it has the same question. Okay, this time is going to be greater than or equal to 14 this time. So looking at the shapes here, we know there's 15 of them in total. So how many balls in this row, because this actually goes from 1, if you haven't played pool before, is 1 through 15. So 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, so forth, all the way up to 15. So how many of these balls are greater than or equal to 14? Well, to me, it's only 2 of them. It's going to be either 14, because that's equal to, and 15. So that goes here. So what is the determine the odds against the containing a number greater than, oh, this is actually the total, so we're going to bypass this part. So we'll bypass this part. We'll go all the way down. Let's go script all the way down to the answer. So the answer for this one is going to be here, 13 over 2. So because it said, again, odds against, that means if there's only 2 and it's 15 in total, if I do 15 minus 2, that gives me 13. That's the odds against, or the failure that it won't land on one of those 2. And the 2 represents the success. The 2 that's actually what we're looking for goes on the bottom. Let's jump to number 7. So looking at this one here, let's look at the viewing example 1. We want to know for the question, where's the question? Oh, the odds against, what is the odds against of us rolling I-36? And this one here for the viewing example, they're going to be looking for what are the odds for us picking B5? So looking at this one here, the answer is 49 over 1. So why is it 49? Well, odds against, again, remember, there's actually only one B5 in this whole section. So there's only one opportunity for it to get that B9. So the excess, that's why it goes on the bottom. And the odds against us doing it is 49, because if there's 50 in total, if we do 50 minus the 1, that gives us 49. So the odds against, which is the failure, is 49 of those are not B5. And there's only one of them that is B5. Let's do maybe 2 more examples. Let's go to number 14. So this question here is going to ask for favor now. So because we're asking for favor, remember what goes on top now. The success actually goes on top. So determine the odds against, they're asking for both of them. So this is a 2-part question. The first part is odds against, and the next part wants the odds in favor. So let's do the odds against first. Determine the odds against of selecting an ace, a king, a queen, and a jack. So how many aces? There are 4, 4, 4, and 4. So pretty much it's going to be 16. That's going to be that we actually can select as a success for this part. Well, if there's 16 of them, if we do 52 minus 16, you can see that there's 36 that will not be selected as a face card of an ace, a king, a queen, or a jack. So there's 16 that will be, and a 16 that will not be. Remember, these are only 2 numbers I'm focusing on. So this is the success, this is the failure. So because we're talking about odds against for the first part, so we talking about odds against, we're going to have 36 over 16. And then we reduce this, math, enter, and we get 9 over 4. So this is the one for odds against. Now we're talking about favor. Remember, it's just flipped. So we're going to have the favor, which is on top this time, divided by 36, math, enter, and see this flip. So actually, if you can actually get the odds against correct, the odds in favor is just flipped. Because remember, we're only talking about the success and the failure for each one of these problems. Let's do one last example. Now this one here, they kind of brought us back a little bit to section 1, because part A says what is the probability now. Now that we're using probability, we go back to using the total, what's on the bottom. So what is the probability of that the baby born in this country will have a birth defect? So we say that for birth defects is 1 out of 41 of them. So that's actually going to be our probability is 1 out of 41. So that's part A. This is when we actually do use the total. Now part B, it says what is the odds against us having of the defect? Well, remember, there's one that that has the defect as a success, and there has to be 40 that does not, because remember, in total is 41. So one that does have it and 40 that don't. So for this here, because we say odds against, and like I said, we're going to bypass all this. Odds against means the 40 is the ones that don't, and the one that do is success is actually just 1. So that's why we have for odds against 40 over 1. So I hope that this helps you with section 2. Just again, let me know if you have any questions or concerns.